African community economic system, or if we can at least try to have a basket of policies that will foster economic development within the region for all the regional players, that is inclusive of Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, and of course the newest member who is definitely into the pack, that is DRC. And of course, before we even go any further, remember to download the Smart Digital app. Now, with the Smart Digital app, you have the advantage of streaming live Smart 24 anywhere, anytime. That is after downloading it from the Google Play Store and on the iOS Store. Remember, with the Smart Digital app, you have the advantage of also listening to Smart FM and NBS Codeo. Well then, let's get into our discussion this particular moment about the East African community. And joining us is the CEO of the East African Business Council, that is none other than Mr. John Bosco Kalisa. Many thanks for joining us, sir, and welcome to The Point.
Thank you very much. Allow me to thank you and appreciate Smart 24 for the good work you're doing in terms of promoting business growth in the region.
Thank you very much. And you've mentioned the region. My first question goes to how the region has been able to withstand the pressure that was brought about by COVID-19, and then the external forces related to the Ukraine and Russia conflict that, of course, disrupted the value chain and, of course, movement of goods and all that. How have we been able to withstand and go through this trying time?
Yeah, thank you. And indeed, you raise a very pertinent question in terms of the ability of our region in terms of withstanding the shocks, the current, I always say current 3 C's. Climate change, COVID-19, the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So those 3 C's have had a detrimental impact on doing business and investment across the region. We've seen that it has raised the prices of goods, essential goods. It has impacted heavily on investment and trade. But the good news is that EAC has developed strong instruments, what I call shock-proofing instruments to withstand these shocks. And some of the instruments is our ability to work together, the government and private sector coming up with a solution in terms of enabling trade to continue to move across borders. So that has been one of the strong factors that enabled the region to withstand those external shocks, including the effect of COVID. So trade has been one of the key instruments, key pillars in our regional development agenda, and really it has cushioned the region from external shocks. And as the East African Business Council, being the voice of the private sector, our role is to engage the government of the 7 countries to ensure that they create enabling environment for trade and investment to flourish. So that has been very cardinal in terms of driving the growth. As I speak now, when you look at the numbers, the EAC region is the fastest growing region despite those shocks. We see countries recording the growth of up to 7%. I would give an example. Rwanda is posting 7.9%. Uganda is around 6.4%. Kenya is around 5.6%. Tanzania 5.6%. So, and looking at the African average in terms of growth, East Africa is ahead of other regions, other regional economic blocks that are recognized by African Union. So that demonstrates a very strong commitment by our leaders. That's a good political will, but also the attractiveness of the region in terms of both cross-border investment as well as foreign direct investment. Another aspect that I wanted to share with you is the region's commitment to infrastructure development, productive infrastructure. When I talk about infrastructure,
you're looking at the productive infrastructure.
I'm looking at the productive infrastructure, loads, ports, one-stop border posts. Those are very critical for trade to happen, for trade to fuel economic prosperity. So those are some of the good news. The another good news is that the region is promoting economic diversification.
Okay.
We are shying away from relying on traditional exports to new baskets of exports. We are coming up with new products. I was looking at Uganda, macadamia and other products they are currently promoting, as opposed to promote the traditional crops, coffee, tea and other minerals. So the level of diversification is very high in the EAC, and I think those are some of the good aspects. The third important aspect that has been very instrumental has been the inclusive agenda of the region. The region is promoting gender equality, but also bring the youth into the limelight of the business, creating an enabling environment for the youth to do business, for the youth to drive entrepreneurship. So those are some of the aspects that I wanted to share with you.
Okay.
In terms of building sustainable and inclusive resilience.
Okay.
And those are the strongest pillars I would be able to share with you.
Okay. And of course, when you speak of pillars, I want to believe the pillars push us to integration.
Yes, yes.
Now, my idea is what integration means from my own perspective is coming together for a common objective, really. And greatly, when you look at most of the things, most of the discussions that our presidents have, of course, different discussions from private sector players within all countries is to ensure that we have a smooth flow of movement of goods and, of course, safe travel for everybody who is engaging into the same activity. Let's mention East African community integration. In your own perspective, how far have we reached ever since the EAC was rebirthed? And then also, since we have new members that are on board, we also have others that want to join the same bus. But when you look at the East African integration, by the look of things, how has it shaped our economic development, and where are we in terms of regional growth?
Yeah, you again raising an important point in terms of reflecting on the journey of the integration. Let me say, as the East African Business Council, we are celebrating our 25th year anniversary. EAC is celebrating 23 years of the existence. That's a long period of time. That is a long period of time in terms of showcasing some of positive milestones achieved or positive impact that I'm going to enumerate and share with you. But before I share the achievements or the milestone, I wanted to remind the viewer that the treaty that established the new East African community was very clear in terms of the pillars. One, that the community should be market-driven. Market-driven meaning that the private sector had to take a leading role in integration agenda to boost intra-regional trade.
Okay.
Then the community was people-centered, meaning that the integration should generate prosperity for East Africans. So those were very important fundamental pillars in our integration agenda, and it is always good to reflect on those. So coming up to the market-driven integration, and where I sit as the CEO of East Africa, we always see that the private sector, our governments, our partner states, the way we always position them is that they have allowed the private sector to do business in the region. When when the World Bank used to publish the doing business report, you could find countries like Rwanda in terms of simplifying the procedures simplifying the laws and regulations to do business. So among all countries, Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, they are among the best performing countries in terms of ease of doing business, ease of investment. Even as I speak now, the region is still the most attractive region in terms of doing investment. So that has been supported strongly by our integration agenda. There may be challenges, but I would say overall the integration is working for the people of East Africa. The citizens, when you look at the welfare of the citizen, there is some positive signals, positive trend in terms of integration in enhancing the welfare of the East Africa. Integration generating the shared prosperity of East Africa.
Okay.
And you've seen even here in Uganda a number of industries that are coming up in the special economic zone. Go to Namamve, go to other zones. You can see the strong appetite by the private sector to invest and do business in East Africa. Okay. That cuts across the region, not here in Uganda, but across East Africa. Go to Rwanda, go to United Republic of Tanzania, go to Kenya. You can see the level of investment in terms of FDI, in terms of CBI, is huge, is enormous. So that means that the level playing field has been promoted. As I mentioned, there may be challenges, but overall, East Africa community has registered substantial achievement in terms of those two strong pillars. Because what you see, there has been a kind of deepening of integration and widening the integration by bringing on board even DRC, means that integration, and that was the aspiration of East Africa, to broaden the market. Because we believe that access to market has important component in terms of economic growth. It fuels the economic growth.
Okay.
So that is the aspiration, and you can see now we are talking about a market of around 300 million population, and with a combined GDP of around 300 billion United States dollars. But now moving into the wider continental free trade area again, under EAC commitment to integration, 3 out of 8 countries that were selected under guided trade initiative came from East Africa. Now they have even started trading under continental free trade area. And that was the aspiration of the people of East Africa, the people of Africa, that we need to get away, we need to shy away from fragmented markets into integrated markets. Okay. So that is the dream, and that is what we are doing. Okay.
Well, furthermore, when you look at the private sector, it is one of the key words that you've actually been having out there today. The private sector is the driver of the economy in Africa, and globally, by the way. Simply because now, with most of the countries are being driven by capitalism, I should say. This has actually given room for the private sector to grow and blossom. Brings me to understanding how can we enhance private sector collaboration? Let's say the Tanzanian private sector. Look at the Kenyan private sector, the private sector foundation of Uganda, one in Rwanda, Burundi, or even South Sudan. How can we bring together all these players and, of course, all these particular organizations in the private sector to collaborate together and foster development within the region?
Indeed, that's very paramount in our integration agenda. It's not only the government to create a necessary environment, but also private sector to take advantage of the enormous opportunities offered by the integration. So with that, the private sector, I would say, they are forging partnership, and they have been forging partnership, strong partnership. Companies, I give an example, roofing has established their presence in Rwanda, they have established their presence in Tanzania. So that is the integration, and they are what they call Safari Group. They are everywhere. So that is the integration. Mukwano, and other companies already working or exporting their products across the region. When they establish here in Uganda, or they are established in Kenya or in Rwanda, they are not only looking into serving that market, they are looking at serving the entire region. So what we've been doing as the EABC, and that is our core mandate, has been to remove those barriers that impede the movement of business across the region, especially our borders. Our borders have been one of the challenging issue in our integration agenda, and I'm happy that now, as I speak, the trade facilitation agencies have come together in one roof to ensure that they make it easier for doing business across the region, so that they are able to remove the barriers, both tariff and non-tariff barriers across the region. That will enable the region, the private sector, to build a strong networks and a strong collaboration. Once we remove those policy-related barriers to trade, as well as creating an environment, an avenue for networking, for working together. But above all, we need to continue in terms of deepening trade information. And that is the aspiration we want, that we need to accurately provide reliable, quick information to our regional players, our business community, and that's what East African business is doing. We are doing it at the regional level, but also we have our national focal point like PSFU, Uganda Manufacturers Association. Those are some of the engagement we are having. How do we work together in terms of creating a necessary environment for networking, for collaboration, for partnership to happen.
And of course, now this brings me to the other issue to do with government intervention. Political intervention into business in East Africa has greatly affected the flow of things. A case in point, if we are to look at what is happening in Kenya, for example, the people in Kenya are into some political wrangles, which we do not want to dive into simply because we are non-political here anyways. But trying to look at how they've actually shaped the fear amongst traders. How can we live amid such situations, and how can we create a possible, climate that is, resilient regardless of circumstances for the business community? Because I believe business never goes to rest. Regardless of any war-torn area, you will still find out someone benefiting monetarily. But then, from the East African way, we are not a war-torn, we are not a war zone, by the way. That is something that we clearly thank the governments and everybody in there. But how can we create a peaceful environment for business prosperity?
Indeed, these skirmishes, the demonstration in Kenya, has a detrimental and a negative spillover effects on the doing business in the region. And I was looking at the number that just one day demonstration that happened in Kenya, the business loses 21 million US dollars. 21 million, that's huge. Having not also measured or calculated the effects on the informal sector and others that are disrupted by what is happening. So our view and my view is that one, we need to create strong institutions that are enabled to bring the parties together, and also look at the implication, because that's implication of such a demonstration on the economy. Sometimes we look into the political levels or the political circles, but we don't look at the implication of the business. So, and I think that's where the institution need to play a cardinal role in terms of guidance, in terms of engagement between the private sector and the government to look at the implication in terms of doing business. So I think, as you rightly put it, we are not doing bad as the EAC, as the region, in terms of the stability, in terms of peace and stability, but we can do more. We can do more in terms of arbitration, in terms of dispute settlement, in terms of engaging the parties, the conflicting parties, to have amicable solution, to sit on the same table and agree. You don't have to go on the street. So I think those are the idea that we are looking at. How do we bring on board the conflicting parties to agree on an amicable solution without necessarily impacting on the business.
Okay. And also a quick one, the issue to do with trade barriers. We've seen case scenarios where goods from Uganda, for example, have actually been sent back in Kenya due to lack of standards. For example, when you look at the issue to do with maize, milk, eggs, those are some of those. But then also trying to look at how the governments within the region have actually been coming in to push for, the peaceful movement of goods, and of course, harmonizing these particular trade issues and trying to come to an understanding that since we are pushing for, let's say, the AFCFTA, we can still, first of all, boost regional trade by giving access to various markets. How are we going to tackle this issue in regards to trade barriers, and how does it impact the region? Our strong view as the South African Business Council, we are strongly against protectionism.
Okay. Because it undermines the efforts of integration agenda. Because protectionism means that you are subsidizing an efficient producer against efficient producer.
Okay.
So that is the case for Uganda and Kenya. Uganda is the efficient producer in terms of milk, dairy product.
Yes.
When you're efficient producer, it means your products are cheaper in the foreign market. And that's the message we always convey. So Uganda can export milk because it is cheaper Uganda has invested heavily in dairy industry. Then is able to supply the region. Let another region, Kenya, if it is good in production of eggs, let it export to Uganda, other than creating barriers. So that is the aspiration, that is the spirit of integration. The integration stipulates that countries should specialize in production of goods where they have comparative and competitive advantage, where they are able to enjoy the economies of scale. We're running the numbers across the region. No country within EAC can supply milk than Uganda, because Uganda has invested heavily in the dairy sector. So why should you put resources to compete with Uganda instead of buying milk from Uganda? So I think that is the message we've been conveying, that however much you try to restrict Uganda milk, you will not outcompete Uganda in terms of milk.
Okay.
And that's undermines the spirit of integration, because integration is anchored on competitiveness and comparative advantage.
Okay.
So having said that, countries need to shy away, need to move away from protectionism, to embrace competition, to embrace a level playing field. That's how you'll be able to attract a huge cross-border investment, Kenyan investing in Uganda and Ugandan investing in Kenya. Even currently, when you look at the numbers, with the current challenges in Kenya, a number of investors now in Kenya are Ugandans. Yeah, when you look at the flow of investment numbers, Ugandan are investing in Kenya, Kenyan are investing in Uganda, Kenyan are investing in Rwanda. We're looking at the banking sector. So if Kenya is good in financial services, why don't you put your resources in financial services, then specialize in that and serve the entire market, other than erecting protectionism tendencies. So that is the argument, because they does not help any country, because there is a welfare loss on the side of Kenya, but also there is a producer loss on the side of Uganda. So it becomes a lose-lose situation, other than being a win-win situation, where everyone benefits. So we are completely against that level of protectionism among EAC partner states. So instead of, we need to consolidate, we need to join hands, join resources, and maximize the opportunities provided by a wider market, other than bring this, because that also has an implication on investment. It means that the environment is unpredictable and uncertain in terms of who want to invest the region. Okay. Because we have agreed that goods produced within the region should enjoy free circulation within the region. Very true.
And of course, for the viewers out there, when we do return after the break, we're focusing on now the upcoming East African Community Investment Summit. Of course, looking at what it is they're definitely going to be looking at. We furthermore look at the investment opportunities that will definitely arise from the same summit. Key discussions from the investment world as well. This is the point where we analyze economic policies. Still Joram Paul Sonko with Mr. John Bosco Kalisa, who's the CEO East African Business Council. Big discussions coming up shortly after. Stick around.